Welcome to r/LetsNotMeet. 3 creepy guys following me in a car. I'm a tiny 14-year-old. I'm extremely paranoid most of the time. This was last year. I was walking home from my friend's house. I had my school bag and an extra bag with my school clothes. This is kinda hard to explain, but there's 2 roads that lead to my street. You can either go straight all the way through, or go straight until you're halfway, then turn into a curve. That curve will lead to the top of my street, and the straight road will lead to the bottom. I hope this is understandable. So I decided to walk through the curve, and I'm just walking straight right before the curve when this blue, beat-up car turns in. I pay no mind, and I'm right at the beginning of the curve. The car slows down next to me, driving slowly. I look into the car and notice 3 guys, 2 in the front and 1 in the back. And that's when the alarms in my head start ringing. I start walking faster, and the car goes past me, and I thought that was it. Now I'm walking around the curve when I see the car has stopped at the end of the curve. There's no reason for it to have stopped, and all that was going through my head was that they stopped for me. Now the whole street was empty, and it was in the late afternoon, around 1700, so I just froze. I turned around and walked out the curve and onto the straight road again. I decided to just keep walking straight to avoid those men. In my state of panic, I completely forgot that once you're through the curve, you get to my street, then back onto the straight road where I was walking. I kept on looking back, scared that they would turn around when they realized I wasn't on the curve anymore. Now I'm at the bottom of the straight road, about to turn onto my street when the car appears in front of me. I froze. I had no idea what to do, and my heart was beating so fast. I just turned around and tried to walk back. The car was riding slowly next to me. I then turned around again, and the car reversed with me. I was literally cornered. Now my mom was at my brother's soccer practice, so I knew no one was home. That scared me even more. The guys in the car were just smirking. It was just filled with pure evil. Then my savior came around the corner, a white car. They probably had no idea what was going on, but the blue car literally sped away so fast, and I ran as fast as I could with my bags while calling my mom. I was an incoherent crying mess, but somehow my mom understood me, and she told me she was on her way. I got to my house safely. There was no reason for those men to be on my street, and it seemed like they were there because they spotted me. I am forever grateful to whoever was in that white car. One of the reasons I was so scared was because I live in South Africa and assault is so common here. Now I know I wouldn't have won any possible fight with those men. I really wish I kept my head better though. To those creepy 3 men following me, let's not meet again. Don't catch trains early in the mornings. Here's a brief background. I used to work at a fast food restaurant, and I would do the graveyard shift every weekend. After every shift at 5 a.m., I would walk to the train station and catch the train home. Usually by then, there are your typical drunk people and your morning crazies. Usually I'd sit in the front seat of the train so that I could take a moderately comfortable nap on my 1-hour journey home. But that day I wasn't super tired and decided to take a window seat to watch the sunrise. After a while, I had noticed a guy sitting behind me talking to himself. So I turned off my music to listen to whatever he was saying. I always do this because I listen to a lot of crime podcasts, not that anything usually happens. In the beginning, I could hardly hear what he was saying, but as the train ride went on, the louder he got. Halfway through, I heard him say, "This bitch is ignoring me." And with that, I assumed he was talking about someone he was texting or something, but then I could hear the creaking of his seat as he moved forward, right up next to my ear and said, "You look pretty." All I could do is turn my head and look out the window while humming a tune, pretending that my music is still on. After that, he leaned back in his seat and kept cussing me out. It was getting closer to my stop, and I was getting increasingly worried as this man hadn't stopped cussing me out since he leaned back into his seat. I decided to go on with my normal routine of calling my mom so she could come get me from the train station. Since I speak another language, it was easy for me to explain what had happened and to ask if she could hurry so that she would be there in time for my train. There was just one stop left before mine, and the man was still on the seat behind me. but he had become increasingly more aggressive after I had ignored him. This time he was saying things like, "She has pretty fingers. I can't wait for her to get off the train," and "I'll teach you not to ignore me." I had truly hoped that he would have gotten off at the stop before mine, but that didn't happen. While we pulled into the last station on the line, I slowly gathered my things and started to get up as the doors opened. I had made the mistake to glance behind me as I was getting off and saw the man holding massive bolt cutters. As soon as he saw me, he yelled, "I'll cut off your fingers, you bitch," and began to chase me. Luckily, as soon as I ran up the stairs, the man had stopped the chase to catch his breath. I ran across the platforms and saw the man once again. He just pointed and laughed. "So guy with the red bolt cutters who wanted my fingers? Let's not meet ever again." My wonderful camping story. This event happened to me around last summer. It was probably the scariest story in my life, and I wanted to share it, so hopefully someone learns from it. Something I've realized growing up, year by year, is that this world can be an amazing place, but is filled with some very sick people. And unfortunately, I've seen that side of our world firsthand. I'm a very social person and love the opportunity to hang with friends whenever. I'm also the type of person who's always looking for the next big thing. I guess I should tell you, I was an 18-year-old male at the time of this story and have a decent-sized friend group of both boys and girls. Throughout high school, we had done a lot of crazy shit together. Being just out of high school, we wanted to do something insane together before departing for college, and we all decided to go camping in the middle of nowhere for 3 days. Fun, right? And for some miracle, all our parents thought it'd be fine. So we had 6 people going. Me and my girlfriend Stephanie, my friend Brandon and his girlfriend Kaylee, and Steve and his girlfriend Sarah. We had decided to have 3 different tents for each couple, for reasons you could probably guess. Being a former Boy Scout, I was aware on everything we needed to survive for the 3 days: food, water, and other essential supplies. Being rebellious teenagers, we also stocked up on plenty of booze and weed for our fun getaway. So mid-July, we depart for our camping vacation. After hours of driving and driving down back roads, we eventually find a place that looks secluded, but not too sketchy like some horror stories. There were houses near, but not too close. Again, we weren't looking for a sketchy woods to camp, but unfortunately, no service. It took us at least 3 hours to get everything set up. While the girls and Steve finished setting up camp, Brandon and I took a look around while fetching firewood. We eventually came across a cool-looking trail. Too concerned, because there were houses within a mile radius, and we assumed that those people had used this trail to hunt, which was big in this area, or animals used it. If you're wondering about our car, we drove a Honda Pilot, which was Steve's, that has plenty of room for us and our supplies. We parked the car rather close to the site, so we had eyes on the car at all times. The first night, nothing much happened. We rolled a blunt and drank a bit, and called it a night. The next day we decided to explore the woods a bit, but Brandon and Kaylee stayed behind to watch the site and spend time together. We decided to go down the path we found earlier. Around 20 minutes down the path, Steve spots a metal fence. We approach it to find a cemetery. The cemetery looks old, but there were signs of activity there. And no, not some voodoo shit or cult, like flowers and notes left. And beyond the cemetery, we saw a bigger trail that had tire tracks and a half-assed parking lot for the cemetery. We ventured down the path a bit more to spot some deer, then head back because it's getting late. That night we really partied hard because we were going to leave the next day and didn't want to return with extra beer or weed. Now this night was the polar opposite of the other night. The other night was peaceful, and we assumed the same about this night as we began to turn in. Boy, were we fucking wrong. Now you would assume that there would have been warning sounds earlier in the trip, like a rusty knife on the path or foot tracks around our site. No, not at all. All of us wake up to a blood-curdling scream coming from Steve and Sarah's tent as we hear the fabric being ripped by what we assume to be something sharp. I guess Steve hit the guy really hard with his flashlight and was able to get both himself and Sarah to his car. Now here's the issue. Steve's tent is the closest to the car, while the other 2 tents are closer to the trail. So to get to Steve's car, we had to get past the whatever attacked Steve and Sarah. All of our drunken selves were gone because before getting into his car, Steve yelled, "Cemetery," and it clicked in my head. The trail on the other side of the cemetery. So I quickly grabbed Brandon, Kaylee, and Stephanie and start running towards the trail. I used my phone flashlight to help see. You might think, why would you turn your flashlight on? Well, the last thing I wanted to do was miss the cemetery and be lost in the woods with the guy who attacked Steve. By the time we get to the trail, Steve and Sarah had gotten the fuck out from the site, and we could hear the guy chasing us, but from several yards behind. We were able to find the cemetery rather easily, and I hop over the fence first. When we get over the fence, we notice Steve had not yet arrived, so we all hid in the cemetery. Luckily to our advantage, it was pitch black by the time, and I turned my flashlight off as we hid in complete silence. My heart dropped when I heard the metallic shaking, as if someone was climbing over the fence. The guy had tracked us down, probably due to the fact that Steve yelled, "Cemetery." We all stayed still as we heard the ground crunch as the guy took slow steps. When in fight or flight moments, you are capable of a lot more than you think, and your brain is put on some super high alert mode or some shit. As the guy approached, I realized I had my small Swiss Army pocket knife in my pocket. As the guy's steps grew closer to me, when he was right about on top of me, I grabbed the knife and lodged it into the back of his knee. The guy tumbled to the ground with a shriek of pain and a metallic sound as he dropped his weapon. Soon, the pair of headlights came around the corner. Steve had made it. We all got up and ran towards the car. When I got up, the light gave me a glimpse of the guy. He was tall, bulky, and had the look of pure hatred in his eyes as he clutched the back of his knee. And by his side, a huge machete. I was the last one to get in the car, and even before I fully closed the door, Steve floored it out of there. The girls were bawling their eyes out. We drove into the first house, where we politely knocked and asked for directions to a motel or something. It was a friendly old couple. They told us there was not one for miles. They took us in and gave us warm food and a place to rest for the remainder of the night. In the morning, the man brought his hunting rifle with us to retrieve our stuff from our campsite. When we got there was nothing stolen, but all our tents were slashed up. The elderly woman called and made a report while we were gone, and when we got back, the officers were at their home, and we gave our statements. The officer said there was not enough evidence to find the guy, but they promised a search. We headed home later that day. No one said a word on the way home. We were all processing what really happened. The police, unfortunately, never found the guy. Yeah, college splits us up a bit, but we barely talk about it as a group, and it's been a year. My advice to all of you is please find a populated place to camp. I don't care if it's some Yogi Bear camp. Be in reach of help and the police. Stay safe, guys. Please.